Young adult literature refers to books written specifically for teenage audience. The books usually have a young protagonist and present that young person dealing with issues that other young people all face, such as belonging, falling in love, or deciding what to do in the future. That's for example. Or issues that young people are afraid they may have to face, such as like violence, drugs, dependency, alcoholism, being alone, death or a loved one, pregnancy or divorce of parents. Young adult literature is basically anything young adults are reading of their own free will, their own interests. So, teenagers vary widely in their reading interests. In terms of nature of young adults literature, so it involves teenage protagonists and often reflects and interprets their views. Young adults literature is a fast-paced which is generally dialogue, is direct and confrontational, and the language is sparse compared to adult literature, and it includes a variety of genres, themes, and subjects, and it is basically optimistic or at least hopeful. Young adult authors write from the viewpoint of young people. The young adult books are written through the eyes of the adolescents, so that involves the teenagers. In young adult stories, the protagonists get rid of their parents or an elder to accomplish their own goals, and it includes a variety of genres and subjects. For example, young adult books are abundant in a remarkable diversity of subjects, themes, and genres, as what I've said earlier. Young adult plots develop speedily through a restricted numbers of events and characters. The body of the works include stories about characters from many different ethnic and cultural groups. So young adult literature also reflects the social, the economic, and the ethnic multiplicity. Young adults books are basically optimistic as what I said earlier, and with characters making worthy accomplishments. Young adults work inspire adolescent readers by showing them how to successfully mature from childhood to adulthood, and even in the face of cruel realities. According to some resources, successful young adults novels deal with emotions that are important to young adults. And young adult fiction addresses issues of physical growth and mental maturity in adolescents' developmental tasks. The purpose of young adult literature is to teach adolescents about the diverse peoples and the worlds beyond their community. And it also provides pleasure reading to them and demonstrates the range of human emotions, which allows them to experience as a result of reading quality literature. So it provides them a reflective experience and reveals the reality of life. So this is not about only fantasy, mga fairy tales, and whatever that is not revealing a reality. Here in the young adult literature, it reveals realities of life and provides vicarious experiences and focuses on essentials that make order out of chaos, the chaos words, and depicts the functions of institutions within the society or of the society, then allows readers to escape into the realms of fantasy. There is also fantasies and introduces readers to excellent writers and writing. So it's also helped them develop on how to compose their own writings and also appreciate those good and excellent writers, and increases literacy and the ability to analyze literature. So those teenagers or young adults that is exposed to literature is are more likely to have advancement in critical thinking skills and analyzing skills in literature. For the categorization of young adult literature, so in literary genre, that involves different categorization. So in traditional literary genre, that involves main three categories: the prose, the poetry, and drama. And under these three categories, there are also another category. So in prose, that involves fable, folklore, and fairy tales. In poetry, there are also the epic and the lyric, and the drama that involves the two, the tragedy and comedy. So these types of categorization of the literary genre for young adult literature is involved in the traditional categorization. Prose is a communicative style that sounds natural and uses grammatical structure. Prose is the opposite of verse or poetry, which employs a rhythmic structure that does not mimic ordinary speech. Poetry, on the other hand, is a type of literature that is based on the interplay of words and rhythm. It often employs rhyme and meter, or it is called as a set of rules governing the numbers and arrangements of syllables in each line. In poetry, words are grouped or strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas that might be too complex or abstract to describe directly. And poetry was once written according to fairly strict rules of meter and rhyme, and its culture has its own rules. The third category in the traditional categorization is drama. The drama is defined in the literary devices as the mood of fictional representation through dialogue and performance. It is one of the literary genres which is an imitation of some action. It is also a type of play written for theater, television, radio, and it includes films. Under the prose category, that involves the fable, folklore, and fairy tales. In poetry, it consists of epic and lyric. And in drama, there are the two, the tragedy and the comedy types of drama. For the modern literary genre categorization, instead of the prose, poetry, drama is the first or the main category. Here in the modern, there is two, the fiction and non-fiction. And under fiction, that involves the prose and poetry and drama. And then in non-fiction, that involves the narrative structure, and the other one is the expository structure. In modern categorization of literary genre, So in the fiction that involves the prose, poetry, and drama. So prose involves the novel, saga novella, romance, and short story. In poetry, there is the free verse, the sonnet, and in drama, there is three: the tragedy, the comedy, the tragicomedy, and the farce. Not three, it's four. And in the non-fiction area involves narrative structure. And narrative structure, there is the memoir, biography, autobiography. And in the expository structure involves the description, chronological order, and lastly the cause and effect. For the postmodern categorization of literary genre, in nonfiction that involves the narrative structures and the expository structure, the same as the modern categorization, and involves in the narrative structure, same the biography, autobiography, and memoir. But here in the expository structure, there is the description, the time order, and compare and contrast, and the cause and effect. There is a little differences. In the literary genre for most modern categorization, in fiction area that involves the three, the form, the literary technique, and then the reader. So in the form, there is the drama, the poetry, and prose, and then the literary technique includes the science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, crime fiction, magic realism, fairy tales, parody, tragedy, and the comedy. And the readers that includes the children, the young adults, and the adults. So because of these types of literary genres, can include the children's and the adult also. In the postmodern categorization of the young adult literature, the forms, the literary technique, and the theme is different from those of the other categorization. So the form this includes the graphic novel, short story, novel, the poetry, the epistolary, and the like. And then in the literary technique that involve the Bildungsroman, the problem novel, the fantasy, science fictions, and etc. For the young adult literature postmodern theme, this includes the following: friendship, bullying, body image, accepting differences, dating challenges, the meaning of beauty, the old tales and classic retold, such as religion and spiritual life. For other resources of young adults genres, it includes realistic fiction, problem novels, humor, adventure, sports, mysteries, supernatural, horror, fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, non-fiction, biography, poetry, drama, and the short stories. Realistic fiction is for young adults attempts to treat candidly and with respect the problems that belong specifically to them in today's world, and also it compasses coming of age problem novels and differs from earlier young adult fiction in the several ways. So the characters come mostly from the lower classes family instead of middle class families, and the settings are often harsh and difficult places, and the authors are colloquial language, use colloquial language, and then there is the changes of mood, and the protagonist is an ordinary person. Problem novels often treated the problems include family relationships, finding friends, belonging to a group, accepting one's physical body, understanding and working out problems related to sex, death, living in a multicultural world, and also the involvement of disabilities. So characters here in the problem novels, the protagonist is matures as he or she deals with problem, then experience of epiphany, loses innocence, antagonist also sometimes cause the problem, person who causes the problem, then often unknown or unrecognized by the protagonist. In terms of humor, humor exists in practically every situation and can be an effective tool also to use to deal with problems. Even novel with the most serious story can contain a humor. Writers of any genres can use humor also to develop situations and characters. The characters are young, identifiable, caught up in real situation, and the like. Then the other characters are adult, often underdeveloped. Then the plot is situational and wide-ranging. Humor is found in situations that are not particularly humorous. And the theme is to survive, or you're not alone in problems and life is not so serious. Another types of genres are adventure, sports, mysteries, supernatural, and then horror. So adventure, sports, and mystery are all thought of as pleasure reading and escape type of literature. Supernatural and horrors, on the other hand, are stories in supernatural. The writer must get the reader's attention immediately, and there seems to be a universal fascination with the unknown, such as mga haunted houses, urban legends, and mysterious happenings. Supernatural novels are built up eerie settings, darkness, rituals, ceremonies, family courses, pacts, and with the devil. Fantasy and science fiction, so a precise definition to these two genres, this can be difficult because these genres are related to each other. So according to Ursula Le Guin, of fantasy you get to make up the rules, but then you've got to follow them. Science fiction refines the canon. You get to make up the rules, but within limits. A science fiction story must be flawed to evidence of science. Science fiction and fantasy have been labeled as escapist, childish, simple reading, unreal, untrue, impossible, and even satanic. All fiction, however, can have impossible elements, even though it is based on premises of real life and things that we know could happen to us in everyday life. According to some authors, good science fiction or fantasy is based on a metaphor, and it is somehow the world presented by the author reflects the life of the readers. Nonfiction and biography. Nonfiction plays an important role in the mission of a school library media center, so it fulfills information and recreation. Information books are important to young people, especially at adolescents, then read nonfiction regularly, then yet considers themselves non-readers. That involves the historical fictions, contemporary social issues, cross-cultural studies, careers, then science books, mathematics, and puzzles. Biography and autobiography are the stories or tell the stories of real people. Sometimes they are written in ways that portray characters similar to fiction. Young adult biographical and autobiographical work tend to be short in length. The subject of the biography must seem real even in a fictionalized account of a personal life. The other young adult literature genres here is the poetry, drama, and short stories, as I've mentioned from the other categorization sources of categorization that I discussed earlier. So perhaps due to the popularity of rap music, poetry books have become very successful in young adult literature. And short stories such as some of the popular series are also widely read. Reluctant readers may enjoy short stories because they represent a more manageable to read. And drama also, it is very popular today because of like the teleseries, the theatrical dramas, and the like. In conclusion, young adult literature is a bridge between the children's literature and adult literature, and it is very important to categorize them into different genres and categories so that we will know how to select and provide our community of users such as teenagers and adolescents.